Now, matters selected for topical issue debates. Item number 1, Deputies Patrick Nulty, Derek Keating, Angus Osnuthy and Eamon Maloney to discuss the incidents at a recent concert in the Phoenix Park. The deputies have 8 minutes in total to make an initial statement and 4 minutes in total for a supplementary statement. So it's 2 minutes each, starting with Deputy Nulty.
Thank you very much, Last Ken Corla, and thank you, Minister, for being here for this very important issue. In the short time I have, I'd just like to make a couple of points, if I may, about what happened at the weekend. Can I say, first of all, where I'm coming from on this? I'm 29 years of age. I'm one of the youngest deputies in this House. I was there at one of the concerts on Thursday night for the Stone Roses and other bands, and I think a lot of people I know, peers, constituents, friends, neighbours, attended the Phoenix Park over the weekend. And what I want to talk about is citizenship, because we have a right to expect every citizen in this country, when they go to an entertainment event, a music event, a concert, a play, whatever it may be, to be able to participate in that safely, securely, and to enjoy themselves and to have fun. Now, what happened on Saturday was none of those things. I've spoken to people who were there directly, young people who would be out at weekends and so on, as young people do, who were afraid of what was going on, who felt under threat, who felt a sense of menace and aggression that they had never witnessed at a concert or a musical event like that before. We have very serious questions to ask, and I believe the promoters of this event have very serious questions to ask in terms of the level of security and scrutiny that took place in and around Phoenix Park, in and around that concert, where people searched. Was there enough steps taken to make sure people who were clearly intoxicated or under the influence of illegal substances allowed into the concert? Where they searched for weapons and so on. We witnessed very, very serious violent events, and residents living in the Castleknock and Ashtown area also have a right to be able to go about their business safely and securely. There was a huge amount of negative and, I would say, antisocial behaviour in and around those areas, particularly on the Saturday night.
Thank you, Deputy.
And, Minister, I look forward to...
Call now on Deputy Derek Keating. 2 minutes, Deputy.
Ken Corla, and I too want to join with my colleagues in thanking the Minister for coming into the House to deal with this subject. What I want to say is that I believe that the likes of what happened last weekend should never be allowed to happen before. Concerts are very lucrative items for promoters, but I think it's time that we adopted a no-tolerance approach, and I'm very interested to hear if the Minister would agree with that, particularly in the light of the violence, the abuse and the damages that were carried out involving 9 people being stabbed in separate incidences, 33 arrests and 70 other charges of public order drink-related and drug-related. And when you see the footage that was shown on television last week, I thought it made for, footage that caused great concern to many people. I welcome the Minister's recent statement where he said that what happened last weekend was, in the first instance, unusual, but also most unacceptable. And I also read with great interest where I believe Minister Hayes indicated that the Phoenix Park should not be utilised for such concerts again. The carrying of knives in such premeditated ways it gives rise to great concern. The selling of drugs, cheap promotional alcohol, which has become the subject of discussion quite a lot recently in this House, and indeed other substances. I think we need to target the promoters, and I think we need to ask questions of the Gardaí. And I want to ask the Minister if he's satisfied that sufficient precautions were taken last weekend, if he feels that there was adequate security, if there was sufficient Garda presence from the necessary squads, the drug squads, the riot squads, the dog units and the emergency response units, etc. And if he does believe it is time to adopt a no-tolerance approach to such events.
I now call Deputy Angus Osnuthy. 2 minutes.
What occurred on Saturday night in particular, but also the other nights, is of major concern. I worked many years ago kind of at security at concerts, but I hadn't seen the level of intoxication that I saw kind of for instance, when I was down in Chapel Lizard on the Thursday and Friday night. People who were in absolutely no fit state to be walking the streets, heading towards a concert. This is beforehand. How many of those people were turned away? Kind of, was there a drink tank somewhere where those people could recover and not be allowed into a concert where they also partook of other drink and drugs? And there was quite a level of drink which, despite some searches by stewards and that, got into the concert, as well as the drink that is sold within that. There was inadequate Gardaí and stewarding in the areas outside of the Phoenix Park, in the residential areas which back onto it, whether it's the likes of Castleknock, Chapel Lizard in my own constituency. And some of those people felt under siege, given the amount of people coming and going from the concerts. It wasn't, in some cases in the past, there was huge traffic problems, but in this occasion it was just the level of people, and some of those who they broke down some of the gates into the park which were blocked to try and encourage them to go a different way. And the level and the destruction that was left after the concerts, huge level of dumping in Chapel Lizards, bottles, clothes of all sorts dumped in people's gardens, and people urinate in people's gardens, but also on their doors. There needs to be an urgent meeting with the OPW, the concert promoters, because there is provision for several more concerts, and if they're to go ahead and you have the same scenes again, that means that there's a failure by us and by the authorities. So I'm urging you, Minister, to ensure that meeting happens quickly, that a proper level of stewarding, not only within the concert itself, but also on the way to the concert, occurs also, whether it's by the Gardaí or the private security companies which the promoters organise. Because residents should not suffer the consequences in this case because there is a concert which is being run for profit. They shouldn't suffer the consequence of that. People should be allowed come and go as they please in those residential areas, but also the other users of the park. The park basically was out of bounds for anybody else for the duration and in the run-up to the various concerts over the number of nights that they were run.
I now call Deputy Eamon Maloney. 2 minutes.
Minister, like other deputies, I'm aware of the level of coverage of this event since Saturday night, the amount of talk about it and the amount that has been written about it. And I have to say at the outset that I'm astonished that 4 days after the event that the people responsible for the concert, MCD promoters, that none of them have been arrested. I believe they should be arrested. I believe they should have been arrested as early as Sunday morning, given the fallout of this particular concert. MCD have been involved in a PR exercise since Saturday night, disclaiming responsibility for what happened, whether it is the attacks, the people who ended up in hospital, or the unfortunate people who lost their lives. But, Minister, it is MCD who were granted the licence. It was MCD who were responsible for the security. It was MCD who sold the tickets, and it is MCD who walked away with the money, the profits. But what do we get from them? Not even a word of sympathy for those who died or for those who ended up in hospital. I still believe that the directors of MCD should be arrested. And in fact, Minister, if it were in our neighbouring jurisdiction, these people would have been arrested. And that applies not only to the UK, I think it applies to Europe. But it reminds me a bit about the unfortunate Stardust tragedy, 1981. No one ends up responsible for these things. No one is to blame. And that's what's going on in relation to Saturday night's concert. No one is going to take the blame for it. It's an Irish way of doing things. But I don't agree with that. I'd be interested in your views on this. And it is astonishing, just to conclude, Last Concorla, in relation to this MCD operators, not a single word of sympathy, not a single word of sympathy in any newspaper, in any statement that I'm aware of, for instance, the Brophy family up in County Laois, who buried their 21-year-old son this morning, Shane Brophy. I mean, they couldn't even bring themselves to sympathise with the family. And what about that young man from Clonsilla, Lee Scanlon? Are his family not entitled to at least a word of condolences? Well, I wish to extend my condolences, and I'm sure other members here do, and likewise to those who have ended up in hospital with very, very serious injuries. MCD have quite serious questions to answer, Last Concorla. And Minister, I urge you, I think they should be arrested.
Thank you, Deputy. Now I call on the Minister for Justice, Deputy Alan Shutter.
I want to start off, Last Concorla, by thanking all the deputies for raising what's clearly a matter of great public concern. At the outset, let me say that I share people's shock and concern at the series of disturbing incidents which took place at the concert in the Phoenix Park last Saturday night. Unfortunately, a number of people engaged in what can only be described as disgraceful and unacceptable conduct. I'm sure that deputies will appreciate that as a number of people are presently facing charges as a result of what happened on Saturday night, nothing should be said in this House which might prejudice criminal proceedings, and as Minister for Justice I have to be particularly careful in what I say in that context. I think it's true to say that a number of concerts have been held in relatively trouble-free circumstances at Phoenix Park previously. Therefore, I believe it's important to clarify if there are particular circumstances surrounding this concert which may have given rise to particular difficulties. The Gardaí are reviewing what happened and held an initial meeting with the concert promoters in this context yesterday. I understand the meeting was useful and that a range of issues were discussed surrounding the event, including those matters of serious concern which are in the public domain, including some of those raised this afternoon. It was agreed that both organisations will carry out a more in-depth review regarding all aspects of the event. The fact is that the arrangements which were in place on Saturday night did not prevent the type of behaviour which took place, and by that reality it is clear they weren't adequate. I have, of course, been briefed by the Garda Commissioner on Saturday night's events. Indeed, we've discussed them on more than one occasion. And he will let me have a detailed report following the review that's being undertaken. I am absolutely determined that any lessons that can be learned from what happened will be taken into account fully in future planning for such events. Without commenting in advance of the Commissioner's report on specific arrangements for security at last Saturday's concert, it is worth noting more generally that developments will be taking place in the near future in relation to the licensing of the event security sector. The Private Security Authority regulates the private security industry in the state. Since its inception, the authority has introduced licensing on a phased basis into various areas of the private security sector. For example, it already licenses both contractors and employees providing door, supervisor and security guard services. Many of those working in event security are therefore already licensed and accordingly have to meet certain standards or require certain qualifications. In addition to these existing requirements, I have been working for some time on regulations which will lead to the licensing of all individuals working in the event security sector. I expect to finalise those regulations shortly. The Private Security Authority proposed to licence all contractors working in the event security area by the autumn of 2012. While the vast majority of people who attend concerts and similar events just want to enjoy themselves, I am concerned that the behaviour of a significant number of people at the Phoenix Park last Saturday was clearly unacceptable by any standards. Unfortunately, this was reflected in the number of arrests the Gardaí had to make. I have had occasion to comment recently on the degree to which excessive alcohol consumption contributes to public disorder and antisocial behaviour. The events of Saturday must underline the need for us all as a society to acknowledge the damage which the misuse of alcohol can cause. Clearly, we all wish that summertime concerts and similar events would be a time for celebration and enjoyment, but especially for young people, not an occasion of widespread public disorder. Nor should such events present a threatening atmosphere for those who conduct themselves well and attend them. For my part as Minister, I will do all in my power to improve our regulatory framework. I have previously stated my intention to introduce additional regulations which will aim to curb the level of excessive drinking. I expect those regulations to be brought into force towards the end of this year. It is also clear that drug taking amongst concert goers contributed to the disorder which took place. Certainly one of the issues which the review will have to address is whether sufficient measures were in place to prevent this. I personally received reports of drugs being openly sold during the concert event and no intervention by the security people who were supposed to be providing security at the event. While I don't want to preempt the outcome of the Garda Commissioner's review, it seems to me that a comprehensive risk assessment has to form part of planning for any such event. The reality is that not all concerts pose the same type of issues. We will have to ensure that processes are flexible enough to address that. Put simply, if licences are to be granted, conditions will have to fully reflect a comprehensive risk assessment that takes into account the profile of persons likely to attend any particular type of concert, and a relevant issue is, of course, who are the individuals who are performing in the concert, what crowd is it anticipated they'll attract. I'm not convinced that that was adequately assessed by the licensing authority in advance of this particular concert. On the one hand, we have to allow people to enjoy themselves. On the other, we have to be realistic about addressing the public order risks involved. The Gardaí will continue to have my full support in upholding public order for the benefit of the law-abiding majority of our people. It's right that I should make it clear that the Gardaí are determined to pursue fully anyone who engaged in criminal behaviour last Saturday night.
Thank you, Minister. Now, there are 4 minutes left. I'll have to be strict on this. 1 minute per deputy, starting with Deputy Nullty again.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your response. And can I also express my condolences to the Scanlon family and to all the families who lost loved ones over the weekend. I just wanted to say, Minister, can you assure us and can you assure the residents in the Castleknock, Ashtown area that this will never be allowed to happen again, that MCD will not be granted licences for these type of events unless they can guarantee, insofar as is practicable, the security and safety of those in attendance. Tickets for that concert were expensive, €60 and upwards. Maybe people in very difficult times spent a lot of money there. The least they can expect is that they themselves or their children or loved ones who they send to that concert can attend it safely and securely. And can I ask you to maybe elaborate on your discussions with the Garda Commissioner? Is the Commissioner satisfied that there was sufficient Gardaí in the vicinity of the Phoenix Park on Saturday night? And if not, why not? Thank you.
Very much, and I too would like to, in the first instance, express my condolences to all those families who have been bereaved and all those who have been injured in the weekend's events. In my presentation, I suppose I'm focusing on future security. I'd like to ask the Minister if he feels that an airport-type security measure is appropriate in such events, because we have many events in Ireland today, and not all those who have huge attendances, some who just have a small number of thousands. We often go to local football matches, for example, and where there's an atmosphere where perhaps violence can be expected, the appropriate type, airport-type security is provided for. And I'm wondering if the Minister has a view on that, particularly given what happened last weekend and other such future concerts that will attract such huge numbers that are scheduled to take place over this summer in Marley Park and once again in Phoenix Park. And I thank you.
Deputy Slutty.
Minister, Machóver an Commodden Consiúla for Boston Clownica agus Commoddo Siúla Tá Fós Gortatha as Harleg and Dershachan. I want to ask, what can be done to deal with concert goers who are patently unable to enjoy themselves at a concert, who cannot walk no more than crawl, and that's the scenes that I saw. There has to be something put in place that they can be turned away or put in what I think is a drink tank or something, or a recovery unit. And also, what can be done to ensure that there's an increased Garda presence or stewarding in the vicinity of the concert? Many years ago, when I was in the trip to Tip or in Slane and the likes, that was one of the conditions, is that the towns or the residential areas nearby had stewards which were paid for by the concert going. That didn't seem to happen in the likes of Chapel Lizard, to my knowledge. So there needs to be an increased presence in the surrounding areas if any of these type of concerts are to go ahead in the future.
Deputy Maloney.
Minister, thanks for your frankness and your replies. Just to say that in relation to attributing blame, can I just say that the responsibility again for this and efforts by the promoters to distract from their own responsibilities in this by diverting it towards the OPW and Garda Síochána or Dublin City Council. I don't accept that whatsoever. I think the responsibility is perhaps minimal. And I agree with you that you have your own reservations on what you can say given the legal position that we're in. But I concur with what you said about those who injured people, etc., that the normal course of the law should take place. And can I conclude by just saying that I believe that the law also applies to those who made money out of this concert, equally to those who actually committed offences there. The promoters, in this case, they have questions to answer. They were responsible for the concert and for security, which never... I mean, if the security had been proper, we wouldn't be having this discussion. But there wasn't proper security, and MCD have questions to be asked. I don't think they should be allowed to be granted any licence in the future, given the loss of life in this particular thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister.
Yeah, again, I want to thank deputies for their comments, indeed some of the very constructive comments that have been made. I want to emphasise this is a matter of very substantial concern to me. I want to give deputies some insight into the security arrangements. I'm told that the promoters had 511 security personnel present on the occasion of the concert on Saturday evening. That number actually exceeded the number that they were licensed to be required to provide that night. But quite clearly, based on the nature of the concert that took place, it appears as if that was inadequate. But again, I want to be careful not to prejudge what's going to come from the Garda Commissioner. The Garda Síochána had 158 members that night engaged in providing policing services. That compares with 122 that the Gardaí required on the night of the event that preceded the Saturday night concert, and there was another concert on Sunday evening in which there was 122 members of An Garda Síochána. My concern, I have a variety of concerns. Essentially, this concert could, because of the profile of the young people who attended it, in other circumstances be described as a rave. It was that type of event. It was a different event to the event that took place on the Thursday or the Sunday evening. I'm concerned that the licensing authority didn't have adequate regard to the age of those who were attending the concert and the heightened possibility of difficulty that arose from those who were both playing in the concert and those who followed the individuals who were playing in the concert. I'm not saying that as a criticism of the musicians themselves. And I'm very conscious that there's an age divide between many of us in this House and those who attended the concert, perhaps not quite in relation to Deputy Nulty, but perhaps in the context of the rest of us. But I think that was a concern. The issue that can we give assurance to the local community this will not happen again? Well, the Garda Commissioner is conducting his review. I'm expecting some recommendations to emerge out of that review, which should provide for perhaps additional conditions that should be imposed on promoters of concerts in the Phoenix Park. I don't want to rule out concerts in the Phoenix Park. If we look at the Sunday evening concert, Thursday evening concert, there weren't this level of difficulty, and it would be unfair to rule them out in their entirety. I do take the view that promoters have a responsibility to ensure that those who attend concerts can do so safely, that there is no sense of menace, and that individuals who clearly should not be admitted are not admitted. I am not convinced that enough was done to ensure those who were seriously inebriated prior to the concert, or those who were clearly and visibly under the influence of drugs, were excluded from the concert. I believe it should be made clear in future that individuals in that condition will be excluded. And if the Ceann Comhairle would just permit me to add 3 sentences, I am concerned that the security arrangements at the concert may have been more focused on ensuring individuals didn't bring drink into the concert so as to reduce the commercial benefit to the promoters of the drink sold at the concert than the security measures were concerned with protecting those present at the concert. And I think that is a very specific issue that needs to be seriously addressed. Deputy Keating has raised the issue of airport-type security. The difficulty, I think, with this concert, as I'm told, is that there were a large number of young people sitting around Phoenix Park drinking in the immediate period prior to the concert, and the doors were only opened a half an hour beforehand for somewhere in the region of 40 to 45,000 individuals to enter. The doors should have been opened a lot earlier, and the approach taken to alcohol, and it's an issue relevant not just to the concert promoters, resulted in many young people lowering cans of alcohol at a rapid rate before gaining entry for fear otherwise they were going to be confiscated. The final thing that I think needs to be said. I do think the promoters should apologise for the level of disorder at the concert, and apologise to the vast majority of people, law-abiding, who attended it in the hope of having an enjoyable occasion. And I suppose the final point that is worth making is that whilst we have seen, unfortunately, a series of recent incidents where trouble and violence was fuelled by young people drinking to excess and taking illegal drugs, this problem is not simply a matter of law and order, nor is it one confined to this particular event. This is an issue which requires action by parents, by educators, by those who sell alcohol, not only in public houses, but right across the retail sector. For my part, in the coming months, I will be putting in place regulations at addressing the problem of excessive drinking. And the deputies have helpfully outlined a number of the concerns which arose from Saturday night's events. I will take whatever action is open to me and is required when I receive the Garda Commissioner's report.
Thank you.